Dr. Composure. The word of the day. The word of the day. Welcome, everybody. Hey, Declan Joe. Hey, Charlene. Hello, everyone out there. Thank you for those who are watching the replay. Oh, I just just turn it right off. I didn't even fade it out. Oh yes, composure, definitely. What a day! I mean, it's what? It's only 9 o'clock. I'm on early because I have a few things I have to do this morning. So I thought, might as well just get on. Might as well just get on here and get going. I find, one of the things, history tells us things, right? And sometimes you have to dive deeper to what even what has been written about history. So there's things that, of course, we're told about history and stuff, that we're taught in school. But then you can get in deeper and look into things deeper. When you go into history, you can go into finding about, going about their families, or find out or pull up their astrology chart. That's going to tell you a few things that's happening, or how things, especially since we're in the timelines. Wow. I mean, Richard Simmons died how many times? Twice already? I mean, when they announced that, and I was just like, oh, I thought he died already. Like, I honestly, because there's a huge thing I remember on watching, and it just popped up on the news on how sad everybody was, and they made a huge thing about Richard Simmons passing away. And they did a lot of interviews on, the last few years of his life. He was very much a kind of a recluse, because he gained a lot of weight back, and he didn't want to upset his fans. And so he really, withdrew, and he died. And then he died again this year. So 10 years later, he died again. So I don't know what he's been doing for the last 10 years. And that's the same way with, many different celebrities that you see, and like, oh, I thought he died. That's why they call it the Mandela effect, right? Because there's a time where people think that Mandela died earlier or died in prison. And one where he came out and living the timeline where he lived, served. I don't think he ended apartheid, but he came into a structure of bringing the African National Congress party to the limelight, and having it recognized. Now it's like totally fucked, and they just fucked themselves because everybody got so fucking greedy. But it's where that's what they got as the Mandela effect, right? So history is a funny thing. It's like, what timeline are you on to remember things? And also, what is being written, and who is writing the writing, right? And one of the things that I love to do is, sometimes I, do the tours in Calgary. And doing some of the tours in Calgary is that telling the stories, like some of the stories that I have picked up, either through readings or even through premonitions and understanding. Because history isn't just the kings and the queens and the prime ministers and the presidents, or the Senate, or Caesar, or the Roman Empire. It's the everyday people. In Pompeii, they are excavating another part of Pompeii that they didn't know existed, right? And as they're excavating, they found this one area, and it was closed in, but they could tell by the tracks, they're like, the people's feet from the volcano were still embedded. They were still there. They could still see the tracks of the donkeys and the tracks of the people. And what they figured out, what it was a wheat, grinding the wheat, right? And what they noticed is that it was very enclosed, and very tiny windows, and a very small entranceway to get in there and to get out. And they figured that this was an enslavement place. So there were slaves that were working there with the donkeys, grinding the wheat on 24-hour basis to feed the people of Pompeii, to feed the people. And the person who owned that, of course, was a very wealthy person, and he had slaves, and if you think of that time, slaves were of all colors. They didn't give a shit. Like they didn't discriminate on color for being a slave. If you were from China, you were a slave. If we got you from England, you're a slave, or Britannia at the time. It didn't matter. If they thought you were lower than they were, you're a slave, and we could buy you, right? So finding out the history of part of these people who were slaves, and was part of the time, it was part of the economy. It's interesting because that's what our society has been built upon people who dig the trenches. After World War II and World War One, it was like building the trenches, building things, putting in the light posts and everything else. And it was done by the everyday Joe, right? Whoever wanted the job got the job. And some of it was frowned upon because a lot of these people came in, or they left service, so they had a service job. So a service job would be somebody who worked in a big house, but then all of a sudden the big house couldn't afford to keep all the servants, the service people. And so, the footman, the butler, the maids, the scullery maids and the cooks and everything else were all let go. So where did they go? They had to find other jobs, other means, right? And same way after, with even before World War II and in other times of war. So the reason I'm bringing this up, there's always a reason. So, there's history there. There's history that we have to understand, that even though this time seems horrific, and it's not, it seems not to be getting better. It seems to be getting worse. That there's a history of this. It's nothing new that politicians or the people who have power want to take advantage of the little person, of the everyday Joe who just wants to fucking live his life, right? Just do what he's been doing for the past, my family, whatever. We're happy. We're doing it. We're enjoying life. We're embracing it. We're loving, being alive. It's just like things like, could you imagine, like, all of a sudden King Henry VIII comes in and says, I'm sorry, you can't be Catholic anymore. Okay, what do I do now, right? So the things that were imposed upon people and forced to do, because the powers that be said, if you don't do this, because we're closing the abbeys, we're closing this, we're closing that, we're closing the nunneries, we're taking the land and we're selling it off, right? Because the church had a lot of land, and we're going to sell it off, and we're going to destroy everything. So everything that you had been destroyed. Everything that you believed had been destroyed. We're in a time, as I said, timelines, about 1778 and 1860, some of the time, that timeline. We can go all the way back to the 1500s when King Henry VIII, that timeline comes in as well, because it's where Pluto was. And how these transitions in history made the regular Joe have to change. And they didn't have a choice. They had to change how, okay, if I don't want my family killed, if I don't want my family slaughtered, and that's the whole thing. When you're standing up for your rights and stuff, it's very difficult when your family's being threatened, when everything, that your livelihood is being threatened. It takes a very unique soul and unique calling for that person to come out and say, I'm risking it all. I'm risking it all. We're seeing a few of them coming out in history right now. And you've heard me talk about Tommy Robertson, and there's an Irishman that's coming out as well, and standing up and saying no more. We're seeing it through independent media, where some of these young guys are going on the streets and asking questions, talking to the regular people. That's going to be a part of history. They're recording what people are thinking. Whether you can disagree with what is being said, which is fine. You don't have to hate them, but you could disagree with what they say. You may not like what they're saying, but this is where history is being brought out and it's being shown to us. And some of it is that we don't want to look at it. We don't want to look at the homelessness. We don't want to look at, I can't remember but they give away food for free. And how many each time, every single time they set up to give away food, there's more people than there was before. First time in over 100 years, people are seeing food lines. They've never seen that before. We knew about food banks, but we didn't know that there were, and back in the 30s, they were called bread lines because people were giving out bread, right? There wasn't, it was basically churches, other, organizations that came together and said, okay, we got to do this because people are starving. And we're starting to see that again in history. And this is where a renewal and understanding that's coming in for us to look at within our own selves and within our own souls. Where are you going to stand up? And even, and there's no criticism on people saying, like, I'm not going to partake in this. I don't want to have a say in this. I don't want to speak out. And that's understandable. That's okay. But you're going to find others that are going to come out, and those are going to be the ones that are going to be what we're going to call the martyrs or the victims. Right now, in France, the rioting, the craziness that's taking over in France because of the Olympics coming in, and even when they passed the torch, and it was, it's just like the people that they passed the torch with, whether you agree with it. I mean, one of them, I just feel like, I know some transgender, but some of these people who are dressing up as trans, they look like a fucking clown. They don't, like, they can be beautiful, they could be whatever, but if they want to emphasize more, like, oh, this is who I am, and make a clown out of it. I don't know. Anyways, that's going to be going down, and I think, if you think in 100 years from now, and people look at all this, are they going to remember? Are they going to remember all the craziness? Are they going to remember, the senility of Joe Biden? Are they going to remember the craziness of Trump and the underhandedness of Trudeau? Are they going to remember this? And this is where, for us, this is part of the awakening. It's where we start to say, okay, what do we want for people to remember? What do we want to bring forth into our future? And it is a pondering question. It can be one that brings in, a lot of frustration, overwhelmness. It could be one that is that you just don't want to pay attention. You just want to go on and do your life the way that you want to do it, and not give a shit. But I feel the powers that be and the energies and the frequencies that are coming in are going to get people to really focus or really uh, wake up. But that's the thing, is that now the WEF and the European Union are using the words wake up. People have to start to wake up. And you're just like, Okay, we've been saying that for a long time. Now we have others that are starting to say, you got to wake up. We got to get the people to wake up. They got to see what's happening. So now you're going to find that, as what they've always done, is that they're going to set fear. Fear is going to get people to wake up, but are they waking up in a way that is spiritual, that is allowing them to see, a whole gamut? Are they looking, do they see the peripherals, right? Or are they waking up and they're just like, ah, and they're all in fear? That's the other part of it. It's in waking up where you wake up startled and you're just like, holy shit, what the fuck? I mean, it's funny, CNN, and it was all over. My husband was showing me on the news, and I was, yeah, I know. Declan Joe sent me an article, and I'm just like, okay, there. And it's funny how the woman was saying it on the news, like, oh, do you, whoa, 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 the Russians and the Chinese, and look at, they were in our Air Force and NORAD. And she just, the way she was stressing it was like, look at this. And people, for the regular Joe who just turns on the news, would be like, oh my God, without even understanding that this isn't the first time that the Canadian Air Force and the American Air Force escorted them out of our whatever. And I was just like, I was laughing. I was just like, they've been doing this for years. I mean, you could be on there's parts of Alaska, you could see the tip of Russia. And it's on a different timeline. Their time is different than ours. They're 15 hours ahead. So go over there if you want the future. They can see that. The Russians fly around the North Pole all the time. They're right there. They're already making right now, Russia is making a trade route through the North Pole. So in knowing the knowledge, that's part of the awakening, and understand, oh, okay, a lot of this has been happening and going on. Why are they emphasizing that now? Well, they're emphasizing it now is because they want to wake you up in a startle, like, oh my God, then we must go to war because they're bad people. History showing us they've done that before. I mean, when the Revolutionary War came in the United States and they're breaking off, not everybody was for it. A lot of people were just like, you know what, man, I just want to live my life. Some people went to California. I mean, California, we're just like, they wanted to get the fuck out. They were just like, I don't want to be a part of it. I just want to live my life. And that's the same way with during the Civil War, and California and Oregon were part of the states. They were more of the red, and of course the South was, the blue part. But this is where it's like people are going like, I don't want to be a part of this. I just want to feed my family. I just want to get out and just do the things I normally do. But the startling part is that it's that part, that awakening that says, you know what, we're going to just hold you hostage here. We're going to make this, because, that fear, that's why you're going to find certain people are going to rise up out of this. And they're going to be the speakers. They're going to be the ones that people are going to hate. When I, listening to Tommy's history and everything else, I know some of you don't know who he is. That's fine. But listening to his history, he was just a regular Joe making good money, and just started to see and started to wake up to the shit that was happening in his world. He was a footballer. He was a regular footballer, regular Brit, right? And started to really say, hey, this isn't right. Why are you prosecuted? Like, why am I being prosecuted or pushed aside when that group is doing bullshit and selling drugs and stealing our little girls and doing obscene things with them, and you're allowing it? and he had to stand up. He had to fight. Now that's part of that. When I talked about, when things get to a point and people start saying, you're hurting our little girls, you're hurting our people, that's when people start to get really mad. When people start to starve and they don't have food, that's when there's going to be rebellion. It's been throughout history. But it seems like the powers that be don't read history, obviously. The bigger the bread lines, the bigger the lines come from people looking for food, the more grumbling there happens, and people are starting to get frustrated. When things are starting to be prosecuted and pushed upon you, and you're just like, hey, I didn't have a beef with you before. I didn't give a fuck who you were praying to or how you were praying, but now you want to push it upon me. The push starts to come. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this where with the moon in Aries, thank God, coming out of Pisces, this part where we are starting to like, okay, and I feel like people are sort of shaking off the dust in their eyes and starting to see what's actually going on. And sometimes it feels overwhelming, it feels depressing, but we have where we can start stepping into that light and faith, and that's what we have to start doing. This is where we have to, where we feel we can't take action. We feel we can't do anything. We feel like maybe there's an imposter syndrome. That means feeling like, oh, well, they're doing it, I don't want to imitate them, and whatever. But things you have to heal. It's getting over it. It's getting curious to new ideas. And don't be in a stalemate. Don't just sit around and say, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. This is where you have to start taking actions instead of inaction. And this is about not over processing it. August, each month as we're getting through this year, each month is coming more intense, more intense, more intense. And pushing people to a point where here it's saying for us, you might be in a stalemate. You might be in a position of saying, I'm done, I don't want to do anything. But here we have, and there's a finger of God there that's saying, no, you got to get up, you got to get going. You got to start looking around. You got to start seeing what's happening. Because in seeing what's happening, you might not understand it, you might not know what to do with it all, but it's the process of saying, you know what, I got to still get up and I still got to take some action today. I still got to get involved with what I need to get involved with today. And not stay in bed with the covers over my head. Yeah. Pretty crazy. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. And that's the whole thing. There is so much. The last few days, I have a reading today, and that's one of the reasons, and I thank God for it because it really helped to do certain things. And to help us to do, some of the things we needed to do for that day. But realizing, certain things don't go very far. But this awakening that's coming, this energy that's coming, and even for myself, it's frustrating, it's overwhelming. Like today, I really didn't want to get up. I didn't want to get going today. I was like, okay, no, you got responsibilities. You have things that you have to do. You still have to show up in some way. And taking that step each and every day right now. Sometimes it feels like an overwhelming challenge, but it's where through the grace of God, through prayer, through meditation, for me, helps me to get through that. And the gratitudes, doing the gratitudes, just really, even though it feels like, what the fuck, why am I doing this? Is showing me that, okay, it's helping me to get a different mindset. It's helping me to really overcome a lot of the inner challenges and the battles that are there. So, and definitely, if you are wanting a reading, you can book in and we can do a natal chart reading, tarot reading. And if you want to buy me a coffee, definitely you can buy me a coffee. Buying me a coffee is always good. That helps. Oh, we got the World. The World is a challenging one because that means the things that you know is ending. There's something new that's on the horizon. There's a newness that's coming forward for us all. There's something that's transpiring, and there's a movement. And it could, and there's a spiritual movement with this as well. So there's a definite movement of, we're at the end of a cycle, we're starting anew. There's something new that's coming in. And we have the experience. We've traveled a lot, and we do have that experience. And with that, it's coming in with the Queen of I don't give a fuck. The Queen of I don't give a fuck comes in and says, you know what? Use your intelligence. Use your knowledge. It's great that, and I know everybody has to work on this differently. Because we all, like, when you say to some people, just trust your gut, not everybody works that way, and that's okay. I'm going to say, trust your inner soul. All of us do have a knowingness. Sometimes we don't understand where it comes from. The Queen of I don't give a fuck comes in, and she's allowing us to trust within what comes forth for us, that information. She's not really, she does love people, but there's also that, this is what I know, and I'm going with that knowingness. I'm going with that because that's going to bring in that transformation and change that I need. It's going to allow for me to step into this new journey. And as I step into that new journey, there are rewards. There's rewards. There, you know, that six of, you know, when the six comes in, it is knowing of those rewards. I mean, I love that horse. That horse is just like the diva of horses, of saying, look at me, I'm sexy, I'm a good horse, I know what I'm doing, people just love me. But the horse still is doing its job. It's still knowing that, hey, I'm great and I'm sexy, but I'm going to get up and I'm still going to do my job because this is what I need to do. It knows that there is celebrations and people will celebrate me and they will love me, but I still have the job to do. And I have the intellect to do it, to go forth. And taking each step as it comes. So there you all go. I want you all to have a blessed day, and may the Lord Almighty watch over and bless each and every one of you, and all you say and all you be and all you do. Enjoy the day. Embrace it. Embrace it the best you can. And if it's just the dishes you got to do, then it's just the dishes you got to do. All right? We'll talk to you all soon. Blessed be everybody. Bye-bye.